Do you know about the biggest layoff in the history of Canada? It's one where 30,000 people lost their jobs. Stick around to the end of this video to discover what happened. Aristotle once said, "What is common to the greatest number gets the least amount of care." On this note, William Lloyd in 1833 coined the concept of the tragedy of the commons. This simply means that when resources are limited, personal self-interest results in the collective loss. Let's say there are 3 cattle farmers who each have 3 cows. They all use a common pasture where their cows graze. It's in the best interest of the farmers to buy more cows so they can make more profit. But the more cows they add, the quicker the pasture will be eaten and eventually depleted. So none of the farmers will be able to feed their cows from that pasture anymore. Even though buying more cows was a rational decision for them as individuals, collectively this resulted in a tragedy. This is an example of the tragedy of the commons, or tragedy of the common resources or shared resources. Other than the pastures for grazing of cattle, fishing ponds, living space, clean air, roads are all examples of commons or shared resources. And due to the tragedy of the commons, we're suffering from overfishing, overcrowded population, polluted air, deforestation, traffic jams, and shortage of natural resources like clean water. Another example is the collective overuse of antibiotics in medicine and in agriculture. Antibiotic is good for the individual, but collectively for society it's bad, since it leads to antibiotic resistance. Coal-fired power plants are cheaper but damaging for the environment and the whole planet. That's another example of the tragedy of the commons. So why is it important for us to know about the tragedy of the commons? Firstly, so we can be responsible citizens of the earth and play our part in the sustainability of the society. Secondly, it helps us understand that in some cases, commons or shared resources might not always be the most reliable sources. People share self-serving, often less than accurate information on social media for their gain. For example, clickbaits containing exaggerated facts and sensational news on YouTube and Facebook, they end up earning ad revenue, but it degrades the quality of the social network, the quality of the information shared, and thus we consume inaccurate information. This is another example of the tragedy of the commons, so we must be aware of this phenomena. Now that we know what it is, why it's important, how do we tackle the tragedy of the commons? The economists have shared 3 solutions. The first one is social contracts, where societies agree on certain norms. In the pasture example, this is where the farmers will mutually agree that they won't buy more cows. Second option is by passing laws through electing the right government. That's why we have hunting, fishing, camping permits. Taxes on emissions are another example. Germany has incentivized renewable energy generation, so citizens participate in installing solar panels. Communities come together to install wind turbines, and they can then sell the power easily to the national grid and make money. This encourages them to use renewable energy instead of coal. The third option is privatization of the commons, so individuals bear the consequences of the loss of resource. From the pasture example, if the cattle farmers were to buy the pasture, they will become more concerned and more accountable for its sustainability because it's not a public resource anymore. Now coming to the story about the biggest layoff in the Canadian history. The Canadian province of Newfoundland and Labrador's historic cod fisheries attracted local and international fishing fleets for almost 5 centuries. It was a very popular destination for fishing, but as the fishing boats and equipment improved, the rates of fishing increased drastically, whereas the government policies were not updated timely. In a period of about 40 years from 1950s to 1990s, the amount of fish near the coast of Newfoundland plummeted by 93%. So the Canadian federal government shut the industry down indefinitely in 1992. This is known as the cod moratorium. Fishing in the coast of Newfoundland is not allowed. The moratorium put about 30,000 people working in fishery and fishing plants in this province out of work. And this moratorium is still in place today. That's it for today. Subscribe to the channel or connect on the socials for more daily videos. Thank you very much.